Welcome to Men Are the Prize, the podcast. It is I, your host, Harvey. How are you doing today, sir? How is the week treating you? How are you treating yourself? I hope you are in a positive mindset. I hope everything that you're aiming for, everything that you're hoping for, you can see it and it's close. I get on here and I talk about masculinity, I talk about fatherhood, I talk about sexuality. It's all a lot of things that make up a man. And I try to talk about the inside about us, not the maybe the superficial per se, but how we look on the outside is important too. It has a lot to do with our confidence. I know I'm comfortable, I'm a stay-at-home dad, so me, it's t-shirt and some shorts and such. But once in a while we got to step out the house. And when we don't want to look a mess. So how we dress has a lot to do with our confidence and how we feel about ourselves. And I wanted to talk to somebody who could kind of go with us with that, who can kind of have a discussion about that. So I'm going to bring my guest in. And here we go. Okey is our guest this week. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm very well, Harvey.
Excellent. Thank you for doing this. First of all, I've seen you on TikTok, and every time I see you, it's these amazing suits. You are so put together. It's an automatic respect for you because I don't think I've ever seen you in anything but a suit, and I'm sure you don't really stand out or you don't dress anyway. I assume you go to bed in like a three-piece or something. You always look.
That's a fair assumption.
Sure it is. I'm gonna read your bio. Before I do that, you know what? No, let's read the bio first, because then I'm gonna ask a few questions if you don't mind. But let's get started. Where are we? Okay. This is a pretty simple bio. I love a good bio because I love reading back to men what they've accomplished, what they've done. But you're quick and to the point. And this is from Okey's words. I am an engineer turned banker and now bespoke tailor. I've had three careers, and any man can do the same. Simple to the point. If you wouldn't mind expounding on how you got to this point in your life, tell us a little bit about your story, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Harvey, for the very generous offer to have me on here and for the very equally generous introduction. Uh, let's get right to it. So, how did we get here? I started out life as an electrical engineer. I studied electrical engineering in my for my undergraduate work, and I went to work for an oil company, an oil service company. It's a company called Schlumberger, which then led to other things. I spent about 3 years altogether working as an engineer, uh, predominantly in the oil field, oil business, oil and gas business. That led to an opportunity to attend business school, and I went to business school and majored in banking and finance because I had a keen interest in finance. And that led me to New York, to Wall Street. Basically, led me to Wall Street. I started out at J.P. Morgan as an associate in the mergers and acquisitions group, the oil and gas or energy mergers and acquisitions group, basically as an analyst, as a very junior level analyst, and then worked my way through many years in finance, approximately 20 years in finance to be actually precise. I came to Wall Street in 1997 and I officially retired from banking in 2017. So I was I was in different capacities, financier, initially as an investment banker, and then sort of asset management, and then private equity, which is the last stop before I hung up my boots in finance. Now, we could go into any measure of detail, in any of those areas, but in 2017, I left that world and decided that I would spend about a year or year and a half just sort of thinking about how I wanted to spend the next half of my life, as it were. And then tailoring is something I've always been very interested in, even passionate about. And the working on Wall Street or working as a banker provided the platform, the opportunity for me to dress in suits. And so, because of that, I researched it extensively, as I do most things that interest me. I traveled extensively to have my own clothes made. mostly to Europe, to Italy, to the UK, even factory tours in China, just to see how large-scale production is done as opposed to sort of small-scale bespoke operations. So with that wealth of knowledge or information, I started a blog. Really, Ask Okey today started as a WhatsApp blog, a small group of friends who were also interested in the subject, and I would write on the subject. I would take images of myself, of course, and other people, and we would talk about these things at a very intellectual level, highly intellectual level, going into details on tailoring techniques, methods, style, and other things. And that WhatsApp group just grew and grew and grew. I did it on the side, and while I was a banker, I always kept it, sort of from about 2014. About 10 years ago, I started that blog. But eventually, the blog grew so large that we couldn't take on more people. The WhatsApp limit, I think, was 256 or so, and there was such demand for the subject of knowledge. And so we decided that we needed to figure out a way to create a platform that gave us access, an open platform. And that's how sort of the social media element came into it. Uh, but at the same time, I had my own ideas about how these clothes should be made. And being an engineer, I started to tinker around with ideas, and I created the first pattern, first pair of trousers we made. I created a pattern as an engineer, always looking for a solution. I'm a fairly well-built gentleman, if I can use that word, gentleman. And I always struggled with finding the right fit for my clothes. You couldn't tell from what I'm wearing, but I'm quite muscular. And I think the challenge I and many men have is that men who are built, especially black men, because the Caucasian frame is very different. Generally speaking, of course, Caucasian, it's sort of like I'm generalizing, but if you think about the Italians or the French or sort of like the general, they're more slim, or they're more sort of slightly built. Uh,
Lean, maybe. Mhm.
Leaner, exactly. Black men, on the other hand, tend to be a bit more muscular, bigger. And you find that a lot of them struggle. People who are sort of big or naturally big bones, or they struggle with finding the right clothes, especially in our contemporary times, where a lot of the fashion is driven by these European brands and designers and so on and so forth. So I thought to myself, well, this would be an opportunity to create something outside that mainstream that caters to specifically, to men who share that challenge, which I had. And so we came up with this idea of the drape cut, what we now call the Ask Okey drape cut, which is what I have on. It's a roomier cut without losing any of the elegance or sort of the shape of the garment, but we were able to, I suppose, using a lot of my engineering background, start to recreate some of these patterns that reflected really some of the garments that come from the golden era, which I still insist was the best period in terms of elegance, sort of the 20s, 30s, 40s, up until the 50s. And so what we did was sort of we created Ask Okey as a platform, as a company. And the mission was twofold. One was to obviously to educate, which is what I had been doing for years leading to that, but also to create the product. Because I mean, if you educate people, you have to you have to provide the product, right, or a
Yeah.
solution. You can't sort of define the problem without providing a solution. So in educating, we're able to define the problem, and then the product itself is, or sort of was, the solution to the problem we had defined. So you could say Ask Okey, the product, is incidental of the problem we were trying to define in the first place. And that is how I ended up a tailor, so to speak. I mean, I am not a tailor per se, but I own a tailoring, or sort of I'm part of a tailoring company, Ask Okey, where we employ a number of tailors, cutters, different types or different roles within the tailoring spectrum. But I am the founder, of course, and I have an incredible team, very talented team that helps pull all of this together. So, in summary, I started out life as an electrical engineer. That took me to banking, where I spent the majority of my career. And in the last 6 years or thereabout, this is 2000, so 6, 7 years, I have been focused on creating this brand as Koki.
Thank you for that wide range of description and answer. I appreciate that. So the jobs that you've had, you've in a few of them, the way you dressed was part of it, the presentation. Before that, did you have a love for this kind of dress? Was this something you wanted to do before it became part of the career, part of how you presented yourself to potential clients and such? Did you always
You know,
want to look? Yeah, go ahead.
I've always sort of held on to the ideal. I think it's sort of trite, but it's a very, I guess everybody would say cliche, but you dress how you want to be addressed, right? And I think it's something that I've always known. I think for me, the turning point might have been, when I was in my early 20s, maybe 2021. I read this book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And I think that book, I could probably point to that moment as a turning point in my life, because I think what it did was is that it provided a framework for me to execute the rest of my life. And obviously, dressing was one of the things he talked about in that book, or sort of generally your presentation. And of course, that led me to other literature like The Prince by Machiavelli and other philosophical works, where Machiavelli himself would clothe himself in sort of robes of gold and ornaments before he went to write, in order to receive divine inspiration from the gods. So you could look at it in so many ways, in the superficial sense, but also in a very spiritual, clothing, or the way you cover or you present yourself or clothe yourself. There's a spiritual element to it, because it lifts you up to a different realm, to communicate, as it were, with the gods. And I firmly believe that. And so it's something that I stumbled on at a fairly young age, and I tried. I started early, trying to sort of express myself, or sort of understand how to present myself to the world. I'll give you an example. I remember, when we were all young, it was all about baseball hats, right? Baseball hats and sneakers, and all my friends wanted the next baseball hat, the next pair of sneakers. And I had this very wealthy friend, or his father was very wealthy, and his father would give him this beautiful, amazing Italian suits back then, to wear, sort of hand them to him, but he didn't like them. He wanted the baseball hats and the shoes, and what I did was I traded uh, all my basketball shoes and my baseball hats and T-shirts to him, and I said, "Give me all your suits." And I might have been 20 or 21 then. I was like, just let me have all your suits. And I had them tailored, because his father was a fairly large man. And you could tell, sort of like, this clothes weren't made for me. But I was so interested in the subject of presenting myself in the best light, that I went to the extent of trading all my teenage clothing, so to speak, or my juvenile clothing, for tailored clothing. And I think that is where I started to get an appreciation for quality, because the man had very good taste. My friend's father, he was a very wealthy man, had very good taste. So I started to understand what quality fabric feels like, even if the cut was off, right? I mean, the cut was off, it was chopped up to make it look like it was made for me, but it was very clear that these clothes weren't made for me. But I started to understand, what does quality fabric look like? What does it look? So from there, I started building this sense, if you want to call it a sixth sense. And then once I finished my education and started working, especially when I went to Wall Street, there was a specific day, my old boss then, uh, Mr. Joseph Sabatini, God bless his soul, he's now retired. He was a managing director, um, in the syndication group at the time. He invited me into his office, said, "Have a seat, young man." I sat down, or rather, I obliged. And he said something I will never forget. He said, in this business, there's only one way to succeed. When you walk into a room, never let people forget that they met you, even if you don't say a word.
Like that. And I hear that statement, and to me, it honestly has nothing to do with how you dress when you walk in a room. To me, I hear that, and it can have a lot to do with your attire.
But it's also, obviously it's your comportment, it's your,
Right.
the way you carry yourself. But I think that um your appearance generally, I mean, that's the first thing people notice, of
Of
course.
course. Of course.
But my experience has been that if you've gone through the trouble of caring about your appearance, then equally much such people are also equally informed on matters such as comportment,
Right. That makes sense.
or verbal expression, or sort of the way they present themselves generally to the world. So it stuck with me, and I think since then I never spared. Quite literally, I never spared any expense to present the best version of myself whenever I walked into any important room, and now any room for that matter.
Okay. Do you think while you were in finance, do you feel like you may have walked into a room or a prospective meeting with a prospective client that the way you dressed was the reason you got a client versus maybe somebody else not getting it?
Well, I mean, nobody's going to walk up to you and say, "Hey, I gave you that deal because you look sharp," right?
Of course.
Um, but I will also, Harvey, you really kind of like evoke a lot of memories. I mean, when I'm talking about things that occurred, decades ago, well, not decades, more like sort of 10, 15 years ago. One day, my old boss at Citigroup, I remember her, God bless her soul, Eva Layton was her name. She was a managing director. I was a very junior level associate, very sophisticated lady, if she's watching this. And she was always impeccably dressed. Really, really, really. I mean, she had these beautiful tailored suits. And one day she called me into her office. This is 100% honest to God gospel truth. She might have been in her 40s then. I was just 20 something. I might have been, 27, 20, also 26. She was a good 20 years older than me, maybe more. And she told me something I'll never forget. She says, your presence demands respect.
Like that. I like
It
that.
was a very, very short, sort of, she said it was so pointed. She says, your presence demands respect, not requests or not calls for. It says it demands. And I think a lot of it had to do with, obviously, the way you present yourself. Because even as a junior banker, then, like I said, I spared no expense in looking the part of a banker. While my mates would probably go to Men's Warehouse or wherever it is to get sort of the cheapest equivalent of something that could pass for a suit. I went all out. I now would go all out and get the best I could afford, or my means would allow at the time. So I mean, clearly they're nothing compared to you know what I wear today. But in hindsight, I think people noticed. Certainly, my boss noticed it or took notice. So I would imagine that if my boss noticed it, obviously the clients noticed it.
I agree. I agree. What does that feel like when people see you and there's an immediate and obviously the reaction may not be blatant, but do you see that maybe when you walk into a room or you talk to somebody and there's this, this respect because of how you present, or how you speak, everything about you is distinguished. Your the suit, you speak, the respect, everything, your tone. So when you speak to somebody and at times it's obvious, they're like, oh my, I'm speaking to somebody real here. What is that like when you realize it and you're speaking to someone?
Well, a lot of things come with age and experience. And obviously, as you get older, you're a bit more discerning about this thing. So when I was younger, I might not have been so um, shall I say, able to perceive the authority that you commanded when you walked into. I'm much older now, so I know it. When I walk into a room, I know you can feel it. It's sort of like a sixth sense. You can feel the eyes on you, but obviously, as a gentleman, you sort of keep your, keep your gaze straight, and you sort of look out of the corner of your. But whenever, and I don't say this in a boastful manner, or self-congratulatory manner, but and also I think it's just your personality. Um, when you know how some people walk into a room and you can feel the energy, and I think when you make an effort to dress well or to present yourself well, you are forced into sort of almost developing a character. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
You're forced into developing a character that pairs with whatever it is you're wearing. And so your body language, your posture, your gait, you know, um, eye contact, the way you move, the way your gestures, everything is calculated or calibrated. Everything is calibrated. And I think a lot of that comes from this unconscious or subconscious effort to match what it is you're wearing or the way you present yourself. It is very rare, for instance, that you see sort of a very, very well dressed person or sort of someone who well groomed person act like a complete um what's the word charlatan.
Mm-hmm. Good word.
It's very rare, right? um And I'm not talking about wearing labels or sort of I've got a Gucci jacket or an Armani or Louis Vuitton. I'm talking about when you see a well-tailored gentleman walk into a room and it's very clear that this person is very well tailored, and you say, okay, this is a very well tailored, even maybe custom made or bespoke, because it takes a certain level of thinking, right? An effort that goes into not just wearing those clothes, but constructing that look. It's a very, very considered process. So I find that a lot of people who are willing to put themselves through that process of creating that thoroughly considered look are also very, very thorough in all other, well, many, certain, maybe not all, but many other aspects of their lives. So it doesn't surprise me at all that when one walks into a room, or speaking of myself, when I walk into a room, it doesn't surprise me that I command attention, because it's a confluence of all these things. It's not just what you're wearing, but it's all the sub material that you've created that goes along, pairs with that look. It creates a certain energy that is very, very difficult to ignore.
It would
Does it
almost
make
be.
sense?
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. It would almost be disappointing if I were to talk to you, maybe over the phone, and have this conversation and feel like I was educated. I feel like I was speaking to, somebody of certain influence. And then you walked into the room and you had a t-shirt and shorts on. It would almost, like you said, it wouldn't match. I would have a certain expectation of who I was talking to. So I
Absolutely.
understand it's the pairing, putting together this vision of what I would expect when I speak to this man. So, and such. But confidence is a big word when I speak to men, because
Yeah.
we it takes a lot for us to feel confident. I don't know if we all wear our attire as part of it. I think it's what we've done, maybe the woman that we've acquired, or the job that we've had, or the money we have in the bank. But having but we I think a lot of the men that I speak to, we minimize feeling good about the clothing that we wear. And obviously you take this very seriously, something that you do. So how
Maybe
would you
too
speak?
seriously.
No, not at all. We're close in age, but I want to say that when I grow up, I want to be just like you.
There you go.
How would you speak to a man who is on the rise? business, whatever. He's going to be a better man than he was in his 20s. He's acquiring some money. He's got a nice place, but now he's looking to look the part. What is the first step in getting to that place with your clothes?
Knowledge. Knowledge is important. And that is why we channel a lot of our resources within Ask Okey to education. We have 5 different platforms, digital platforms, as it were. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, and we're on Discord. We have a Discord community and even a LinkedIn community. And the way we've structured it is that some of the digital platforms are sales driven, but some of them are strictly education driven. For instance, our YouTube channel and our Discord community. So we have something called the Ask Okey University within our Discord community, right? And the YouTube channel, which I personally started, in 2015 or thereabout, is focused exclusively on education. So we don't do a lot of sales pitches. We do all our sales pitches on Instagram or TikTok. But our YouTube channel is focused exclusively on education because that's how important it is to us as a product-based company. Because there's an old saying that an educated customer, right, a well-informed customer is the best customer. You don't have to over-explain, right? You don't have to oversell them. When you educate the customer, right, you let them use that information or that wealth of knowledge to make their own decisions. And so that investment in their education pays off, over and over the lifetime of that customer, so to speak. So the first thing I would say for anyone who is interested in, I suppose, becoming the best version of themselves from, from a visual sort of aesthetic standpoint, is get the knowledge. Um, we talked about charlatanism a few moments ago. There is no shortage of people running around in designer labels who look like complete, pardon me, idiots. Just being able to spend $10,000 on a jacket, right? It means absolutely nothing if you don't understand how, how to use that tool, so to speak. And there's no shortage, right, of people like this, people who just haven't taken the time to educate themselves. And let's say you come into some money, and then you think just throwing money at designer labels is going to make you look like a gentleman. No, it doesn't work that way. So the first step I would say is just sort of find different platforms. Well, not limited to ours. I mean, thankfully, we're in the digital age, so there is no shortage of platforms where one could, spend some time learning the art of being well dressed.
And it's an art. You're right about that. It's a valuable point. Anybody can throw a suit on, but not everybody can wear one. And I think that's a big difference. So I imagine that you speak to men who come in looking for suits and such. I know for me, I've gone through different weights. I used to be two something. I'm 5'5", so when I'm short and stocky, a suit on me has always looked questionable. And I've always been able to tell when I'm overweight, when I have to wear a suit for a wedding or some event, and I'm like, oh my god, what's going on there? Um, have you experienced, and this is just a random question, have you experienced a man putting on one of your creations and seeing that moment when he recognizes, wow, I really look good, and the change in a man's demeanor when he's properly dressed by you? Have you seen that? And what's the
Oh,
feeling?
absolutely, absolutely, any number of times. I mean, this is what we do every day. And because our product is process driven. So, here at Ascog, it's not like you can sort of go and sort of buy a jacket or just sort of grab one from the back room and say, there you go, there's a 42 long, or, there's a 38 regular. Okay, off you go. It's a process because we create every individual garment for the specific person. So you have to build a relationship with the client, as it were, and kind of hold their hands or hold hands and walk them through the process. And it's a huge transformation, right? It's almost literally a transfigurative process. going from a new customer coming in the door. And a lot of times, these are people who've never had clothes made bespoke. A lot of our clients actually are first time bespoke customers who came to us because of the education. Maybe they sort of found us on YouTube, followed us for some time, and so on and so forth. So you can certainly see it um, in their posture, in their body language, just in the person. They grow through that process. It's almost like an assembly line where they come in as an unfinished good, and then you sort of put them through this process, and they come out on the other end as a Mercedes Benz. It's really something very gratifying personally to watch.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So I'm gonna move over a little bit. We've been maybe this professional speak in terms of the clothes, but I kind of want to get a little bit more about you, if you wouldn't mind. So the reason I talk to men is because we typically aren't the most vocal about ourselves, about our emotions, about life in general. So I created this space for men to speak about anything so that we feel more comfortable about things. I want to ask this feels like amalgamation of all the things that you believe in, all the things that you like, the way you dress and how you dress others. And it feels like a huge part of who you are. I want to ask you, when you step away from this and you're doing something maybe just for you, something to kind of relieve the stress of life, the struggles that we all men have to deal with, whether it's family, business, children, spouse, whatever. What do you do for you as a man just to relieve stress? Do you have a hobby? Do you have something that you do that's not for the world, but just for you?
Hmm. Well, they're the basic things you do as a person, right? Get your exercise. I'm a boxer. When I say I'm a boxer, I don't mean I'm anything close to a fighter. I just love boxing as a form of exercise, and over the years I've taken classes, and I'm fairly decent when it comes to the technique. So, there in my garage, I have a boxing bag. I have a very good, leather bag, and I'm at it, several times a week. Um, I mean, obviously, that's one way to de-stress, also sort of to keep in shape. I am the official mascot of my company because I model most of our clothes. So I also have a responsibility to my partners, to my teammates, to sort of to keep my figure, as it were. Um, so sports or athletics or just sort of fitness is one way to have your me time. But, for me, in many ways, it's also part of what I do. It's part of a job, part of my job requirements, if you will. Um, in terms of just my own spare time, my own, there's, I can't really think of and this is a rather unfortunate statement. And maybe it's because this is a point in time where one needs to do what needs to be done. But when you're on a mission, right, especially to create something that's never been done before, it's all consuming, you know. Something I'm sure you could relate to. You're building a platform, it's just very consuming. And I find that um I really don't have much of a life outside of this which I do, and I hate to, sort of I wish I could be a bit more shall I say kumbaya, sort of more work life balance, and
Right.
maybe some people are able to find it, maybe some are able to find that work life balance, what have you. But I think if you're really driven and focused on outcomes or certain outcomes, um it can be all consuming,
Right.
you know and one sometimes takes some consolation on in no in the idea that this is not going to this is not going to be this way forever, right? When you're building foundation, of course, it's very intense, and then one hopes that once the foundation um, have your a little bit more of yourself back. But my experience so far is that when you've chosen to go down a path and you're all in, right? I don't have what I would consider to be much of a hobby. I mean, there are a lot
Understood.
of things I would like to do. For instance, I have a saxophone here, right? I have Henry Selman Mark 6 that I bought many years ago in Paris, and I've always been hoping for an opportunity to learn, how to play it. I just have never been able to sort of create that time. And one of my wishes, for instance, is that with time, hopefully, as I get a bit of myself back, I'm able to sort of pick up my sax and sort of do what I should have done a long time ago, which has become sort of proficient in the saxophone, um, and a few other things. So to answer your question, Harvey, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to find um, a hobby, so to speak, outside of your mission, when you're outcome oriented, if you understand what I'm saying. Like I said, there are other things you do, like you exercise or you do things, but one way or the other they're all accretive, and they're all sort of add towards sort of that process, that core process, right? So they might seem like extracurricular activities, but they really aren't, because they're somewhat tailored to advance your primary goal. Am I making sense?
You always are making sense. Yes, definitely. I have a side question. It just occurred to me. I grew up. I'm an '80s kid, but I love movies, and I love seeing the attire. And one of my favorite movies. I'm a gangster movie fan, and as I talked to you, and you mentioned even earlier about the time that you appreciated, and for some reason, The Godfather has been just popping up in my head. And I always found it interesting that these gangsters in these suits and all the time, always dressed to the nines. They're at home, they're cooking, suits. Even if they don't have the dress shirt, maybe just what we call the white beater, but they always have maybe the
The
suspenders and the pants.
suspenders over the white beater.
Yeah. So when you see movies like that, when you watch movies in general, are you very much, I like this plot, but I really hate the suit that guy's wearing? Is that the kind, are you able to watch film or
You
anything?
know,
And go ahead.
Harvey, I don't watch television. I mean, I own a television, but I don't watch it. Um, I've never, I can tell you in the last 20 years, I can count on one hand the number of movies I've watched that I've sat through,
Okay.
like
Okay.
quite literally, like sit down to watch a full movie. In the last 20 years, I've probably not sat through more than 10 movies.
Okay.
Maybe. Um, and usually it's because I'm sort of not forced, but I have to watch it out of obligation or something. Or but I just I'm not a lot of my learning comes from just a lot of it is reading. So
Okay.
I read a lot of books. I own quite a substantial library. Um, so in terms of my art, um, some develop an eye for this art through watching those old movies, classic movies. I see clips of them here and there, especially now with social media, right? You can see clips of these old movies here and there. But, no, I'm not one to sort of sit and kind of go through all these old movies and sort of identify your icons or pick ideas. I just don't have I have maybe the patience or the time. I'm not sure, a combination of both. So I'm
Right.
not much of a movie person, and a lot of the information or knowledge that I have is just sort of mostly from books, and then sound bites, the visual sound bites, usually from clips, here and there, especially now that uh, social media is so pervasive.
Right. Okay. I appreciate that answer. Thank you. As I talk to you, I feel like you are, I feel like you are a bit of an architect when it's the way I see you in terms of creating a man, and it's the vocabulary, the the character, the intelligence, and then the suit, and then it adds to the composure, the confidence. I feel like what you do is one part of this journey of a man to become. We start here, and then it might even be the final step, like that last suit in front of that mirror, and to see, you know what, I've completed the man that I am, and now I'm showing the world with what I'm wearing. So I wanted men to hear a man speak about the importance of how we carry ourselves and what we wear, no matter where we're going. Is there ever a time when you are not this well put together? Do you go to the supermarket in is the blazer put to the side? Is the collar opened? What do you look like when you are relaxed?
No,
If
I
I'm
mean that is the whole point of acquiring the knowledge, right? Of
right.
educating oneself, because yes, we, I mean, Ask Okey, our product is tailored clothing, right? But within tailored clothing, um, dressing is a language. And I think just like English or French, you have your vernacular, you have your tenses, you have your grammar, and you have to learn the language of dress. Or so for instance, there's a certain, it would seem odd for me to wear a morning dress to a supermarket, like you said, or sort of wear a three-piece suit to bed. No, believe it or not, I do own quite a few pajamas. Maybe not silk pajamas, but I do own quite a few pajamas. So I think, the lingua franca of dressing is understanding what is appropriate for where. There's a place and time for everything. And so, on casual days, I might wear a pair of chinos, right? But you have to understand, how do you dress up a pair of chinos? What kind of jacket do you wear with it? What kind of shoes do you wear with it? There has to be harmony and congruence in the look. And the state of or the language of dress is understanding what goes with what, even in terms of the fabric, right? When I wear khaki, for instance, what kind of jacket should I be wearing? Should I be wearing a tailored jacket, or should I be wearing a blouson, which is sort of like, some people call it a shirt jacket, something a bit more casual. So these things are very important to understand. If I'm going to the supermarket and I want to wear a pair of chinos, what kind of jacket do I wear with it? Putting on a tailored jacket like I have on would be incongruous, if you understand what I mean. So
Yes.
there needs to be congruence between all the elements of what you're wearing. And that takes time and effort to understand and to educate yourself on this thing. So, in short, or to answer your question, no, I'm not always in a three-piece suit, or a suit for that matter. But,
Correct.
part of the education I've acquired and that I teach is understanding how, to present oneself based on the, occasion, so to speak.
Okay. Sir, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like, I'm not as dressed, but at some point I'm going to find you. And I think a lot of my listeners would like to find you. Where can they find? And you spoke a lot about the education and, getting a tailored bit of clothing, but where can we find you? And what would give us an idea of the process of going to the site, maybe looking for that first tailored bit of clothing?
So we have five, as I mentioned earlier, we have, five or six basic, digital platforms besides our website. So our website, which is our HQ or headquarters, is www.askokey.com. That is www.askokey.com, just as it's spelled, Askokey. That is our website, and that is where we have our web shop. That's where we have our store. We are the first digital bespoke tailor in the world, in the sense that we are the first tailor to actually to make your suits remotely, entirely remotely. And so when you go to our website, it's not just an informational website, it's a digital platform that allows you to actually go through the process entirely of having a suit completely made for you. That's one. On the website, we've got the product. We've got also a blog where we sort of write articles. It's a library of art, where we put up literature on education or educating men or people generally about the art of dress. So that's the website. As far as digital media is concerned, we have 6 different platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and then we have a Discord community. Our Instagram handle is AskOkeyIG, at AskOkeyIG. Our YouTube channel is simple, Ask Okey. Our LinkedIn is the same, Ask Okey. TikTok is the same, Ask Okey. And our Discord community, which is now open because we crossed 1,000 members some time ago, it's also Ask Okey. So a simple search, a Google search on Ask Okey is going to throw up, a myriad of information and platform about us and what we do.
Fantastic. All that information he gave will be in the episode notes. If you're watching, you can see across the screen his website, but all that will be in the episode notes. Okay, thank you so much for giving
Howdy.
up your time and speaking. It was a pleasure. I feel better for speaking with you. I got to go change when we're done because I'm under dress.
Thank
It
you
was
for
my
having me,
honor.
Hadi. Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
me.
sir. I appreciate it. And again, all the info in the episode notes. Step away. Thank you, sir. Great episode. A lot of education there. How you look, how you feel, it's important. And it's good to appreciate, quality in the things that you buy so that it makes you look better. And when you feel better, you do better. And when you do better, we're all better. In case you forgot, you are an important person in this world. You are necessary. You are needed. You are valued. And the most important thing you can do is take care of yourself. You are valued. So how you dress is important, and how you wear a suit or not a suit or whatever. You should be comfortable in how you walk around this earth. So make a point to be comfortable. And hopefully our guest is maybe somebody to consider. And like I said, check out the episode notes. His info is there. You are a special man. You are valued. You are loved no matter how you dress. Just stay with us. We need you in this world. You are wonderful. You are a man and you are the prize. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you next week.